There's one question most people spend their entire lives avoiding. They drown it out with distractions, social media, work, entertainment, anything to keep from facing it. But whether you acknowledge it or not, the question is coming for you. Are you ready to die? It's uncomfortable, maybe even terrifying. But here's the truth. Most people live like they have unlimited time, as if death is some distant event reserved for old age. But reality doesn't work that way. Every single day, over 1,500 people die. Some of them woke up this morning, just like you. They had plans for tomorrow. They thought they had time, but now they're gone. And here's the part no one wants to admit. You could be next. Think about that for a second. Not in some abstract, it won't happen to me way. Really let it sink in. What if you never got the chance to say goodbye? What if there was no warning, no time to fix the things you regret? A 23-year-old woman kissed her fiancé goodbye before heading to work. It was just another Monday morning. She had her whole future ahead of her. Marriage, kids, dreams she hadn't even started chasing yet. But on her way home that evening, a truck driver, distracted for just a second, ran a red light. That was it. One moment she was full of life, the next she was gone. And the most haunting part, that morning she had an argument with her fiancé over something petty, something so insignificant neither of them would have remembered it a week later. But she left the house angry. No I love you, no hug, just slammed doors and cold silence. And now he's left replaying that moment over and over, wishing he could go back, wishing he could tell her what he never got the chance to say. How many of us are guilty of this? Holding grudges, wasting time on things that don't matter, telling ourselves we'll fix it later. But what if later never comes? There's an old saying, most people don't fear death. They fear getting to the end and realizing they never truly live. So let me ask you, if today was your last day, would you be proud of how you spent it? Would you be at peace with the way you treated the people you love? Would you be content with the legacy you leave behind? Or would you be filled with regret, wishing for just one more chance? Regret is the heaviest burden a person can carry. And yet so many people are walking around with it thinking they have time to fix it. But how much time do you really have? A year? A decade? A lifetime? Or just a few more moments? Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing everything you took for granted today is gone. The people you ignored, the dreams you put off, the words you left unspoken. What would you do differently? And more importantly, why aren't you doing it now? Most people assume that when their time comes, they'll be ready. But here's what no one tells you. You don't get ready to die by ignoring death. You get ready by truly living. If this was your last chance to make things right, to chase your dreams, to tell the people you love how much they mean to you, would you take it? Because at some point that will be your reality. And the only question that will matter is, did you live a life worth dying for? Think about it.
Every single day, people wake up assuming they have time. They scroll through their phones, make plans for the weekend, argue over meaningless things, and push their dreams off to someday. But here's the truth. Death doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't care about your schedule, your plans, or the things you haven't done yet. It comes when it comes. And most of the time, it arrives without warning. Over 3 million people die unexpectedly every year. That's millions of people who thought they had time. People who put off their dreams, their apologies, their love, thinking they could get to it later. But later never came. A 41-year-old father of 2 was sitting at the dinner table, laughing with his kids. It was just another ordinary night. He wasn't sick, he wasn't old, but in the middle of a sentence, he grabbed his chest, gasped for air, and collapsed. A heart attack, His wife screamed, his kids cried, and within minutes, he was gone. Just like that. One second he was planning a family vacation, and the next he was nothing but a memory. Here's the part that hurts the most. He had spent years working himself to the bone, telling his family, once I make enough money, we'll travel, we'll spend more time together. But he never got the chance. His kids will grow up remembering a father who was always too busy, always promising someday, a someday that never came. How many of us are guilty of this? Waiting, assuming we have time, telling ourselves we'll be happy after we get the promotion, after we buy the house, after we retire. But what if there is no after? There's a cemetery filled with people who had plans for tomorrow, who thought they had more time, who believed they'd get a warning before the end. But death isn't kind like that. It doesn't come when it's convenient. It comes when it comes. Look around you, the people you love, the life you're living. If it all ended today, would you be at peace with how you spent your time? Or would you be filled with regret, realizing you wasted your days on things that never really mattered? A 19-year-old college student was heading home for Thanksgiving break. She had just texted her mom, "Can't wait to see you," but she never made it home. A drunk driver crossed the median and hit her head-on. Her family was waiting at the door, excited to hug her, but instead they got a call from the hospital. Think about that. One moment she was full of life, laughing with her friends. The next, she was gone. No chance to say goodbye, no warning, just an empty seat at the dinner table, an unfinished story. A family shattered by something they never saw coming. And yet, we still live like we have forever. We put off the things that matter, assuming there will be time to get to them later, but later is a lie. It's not promised, it's not guaranteed, and every second you spend waiting is a second you'll never get back. What are you delaying right now? The I love you you've been meaning to say? The dream you've been too scared to chase? The life you keep postponing for a future that may never come? If death knocked on your door tonight, would you be ready? Or would you beg for just one more day, one more chance to do things differently? The harsh truth is, we don't get to decide when we go, but we do get to decide how we live. And the only way to be ready for death is to live so fully that when the time comes, you won't have to beg for more time. Because when death comes, it doesn't wait. It doesn't negotiate. It simply asks, did you truly live? Most people aren't really living. They're just existing, moving through life on autopilot, waiting for something to change, believing they have all the time in the world, wake up, work, scroll through a screen, sleep, repeat. Is that really living? Studies show that 80% of people feel stuck in life, trapped in routines, drowning in responsibilities, waiting for a moment that never comes. They tell themselves one day I'll be happy, but when does that day ever arrive? For most, it never does. They spend decades stuck in the same patterns, doing what's safe, what's expected, never questioning if this is truly the life they want. A 45-year-old man sat in his office, staring at a computer screen. He had spent the last 20 years at a job he hated, telling himself he was doing it for his family. Every day, he'd drive the same route, sit at the same desk, talk to the same people, and feel the same emptiness creeping in. He had dreams once. He wanted to travel, write, start his own business, but he kept pushing it off. Not now, maybe later. Then one morning, his doctor called. The test results were in. It was cancer. And just like that, later was no longer an option. He thought he had time. He thought he could play it safe now and live later, but death didn't wait. It never does. How many people are living this exact story right now? Stuck in a job that drains them, in a relationship that no longer fulfills them, waking up every morning dreading the day ahead, but they stay because it's comfortable, because it's what they know, because they believe there will always be more time. But time is the one thing you can't get back. Every second you spend waiting is a second lost forever. There's a reason people say that most die at 25 but aren't buried until 75. They stop taking risks, they stop dreaming, they stop truly living. And before they know it, life has slipped through their fingers. Imagine being on your deathbed and realizing that most of your life was spent doing things you didn't love, for people who wouldn't even remember you, sacrificing your happiness for the illusion of security. A woman in her late 60s sat alone in her quiet house. Her kids were grown, her husband had passed, and for the first time in decades, she had time to herself. But instead of feeling relief, she felt regret. Regret for all the moments she let slip away. She regretted the times she didn't play with her children because she was too busy cleaning, the moments she didn't travel because she was too afraid of the unknown, the years she spent worrying about what others thought instead of doing what made her happy. And now it was too late. She had spent her whole life waiting for the perfect moment to live, but that moment never came. What about you? Are you actually living, or are you just waiting? Waiting for the right time, waiting for more money, waiting for approval, waiting for a sign. But here's the truth. There is no perfect time. There is only now. If you died today, would you feel like you truly lived? Or would you feel like you wasted your days doing things that never really mattered? One day, you'll take your last breath, and when that moment comes, it won't be your job, your bank account, or the opinions of others that flash before your eyes. It'll be the moments you never took, the dreams you never chased, the love you never expressed. The difference between existing and living is a choice, and that choice is yours to make before it's too late. When people reach the end of their lives, they don't fear death itself. What haunts them is regret, the things they didn't do, the words they never said, the moments they took for granted, thinking they had more time. Studies show that the biggest regrets of the dying aren't about things they did, but about the things they never had the courage to do, the risks they were too afraid to take, the dreams they abandoned because the people they loved but never told. An 82-year-old man lay in his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. He had spent his life following the rules, doing what was expected. He built a career, raised a family, paid his bills on time. By society's standards, he had done everything right. But as he felt his last moments approaching, he realized something horrifying. He had lived a careful life, a safe life, but not a fulfilling one. He had always dreamed of writing a book, but he was too afraid of what people might say. He had wanted to travel, but he kept pushing it off for later. He had loved someone deeply when he was young, but he never told her, too scared of rejection. And now, as his body grew weaker, as death stood at his door, all he could think was, I wasted it. How many of us are living the same way, making choices based on fear instead of passion, staying in jobs we hate, staying in relationships that don't fulfill us, biting our tongues when we should be speaking our hearts, thinking we have all the time in the world until one day we don't. A nurse who worked in hospice once shared that the most common regret she heard from dying patients was, I wish I had lived a life true to myself, not what others expected of me. Think about that. People spend decades of their lives trying to fit into boxes, trying to please others, trying to avoid judgment. And in the end, none of that matters. Because when you're lying on your deathbed, no one else is there to live with your regrets. Only you. A 29-year-old woman was diagnosed with a terminal illness. She had less than a year to live. At first, she was angry, devastated. But then something changed. She realized that for the first time in her life, she had nothing to lose. She quit the job she hated. She traveled to places she had always dreamed of. She told the people she loved how much they meant to her. And in those final months, she felt more alive than she ever had before. Why? Because she stopped waiting. She stopped letting fear hold her back. But here's the thing. You don't have to be dying to start living like that. You don't have to wait until time is running out to take control of your life. You can start now. What is the one thing you've always wanted to do but keep putting off? The one person you've been meaning to reach out to? The dream you keep telling yourself you'll chase someday? Because if you don't do it now, when will you? Regret is the heaviest burden to carry, and the most tragic part is that it's avoidable. All it takes is the courage to start living before it's too late. One day, your time will come, and when it does, will you look back with peace or with the unbearable weight of what could have been? One day, people will gather in a room dressed in black, speaking in hushed voices. They'll sit in rows, looking at framed pictures of you, flipping through memories of your life. Some will cry, some will smile, And then someone will stand up to speak, they'll clear their throat, take a deep breath, and begin telling the world who you were. But here's the question: what will they say? Will they talk about a person who lived fully, who loved deeply, who made an impact? Or will they struggle to find the words because you spent your days merely existing instead of truly living? Most people don't realize this, but we are all writing our eulogies right now. With every decision we make, every word we speak, every action we take, we are shaping the story that will be told about us when we're gone. A study once asked people what they wanted to be remembered for. The top answers weren't about money, status, or achievements. They were about love, kindness, making a difference. But if that's what truly matters, why do so many people spend their lives chasing things that won't even be mentioned at their funeral? A 56-year-old CEO was one of the most powerful men in his industry. He had built an empire, made millions, and was respected by colleagues worldwide. But when he passed away, something unexpected happened. His funeral was nearly empty. His employees didn't come, his competitors didn't care, and even his family sat in silence, unable to find the words. Because while he had spent his life building his success, he had neglected the people who mattered most. His children barely knew him. His wife had felt alone for years, and now, despite all his accomplishments, his legacy wasn't wealth or power, it was loneliness. Contrast that with the funeral of a 38-year-old teacher. She wasn't rich, she wasn't famous, but when she died, her funeral home was overflowing. Former students, parents, neighbors, hundreds of people showed up, each with a story about how she had changed their lives. One student, now an adult, stood up and said, "I was going to drop out of school, but she believed in me. She saw something in me when no one else did, and because of her, I became the person I am today." That was her legacy. Not money, not fame, but the lives she touched. So, what about you? If you died today, what would your eulogy say? Would people talk about how present and loving you were, about the kindness you showed, about how you inspired them? Or would they struggle to find the words because you spent your days working late, stuck in routines, avoiding risks, waiting for a life you never truly lived? It's easy to assume that legacy is something we build at the end of our lives, but the truth is we are building it every single day, with every conversation, every choice, every small act of love or indifference. A father once told his daughter, "People won't remember what you had, but they will remember how you made them feel." So how are you making people feel? Do your loved ones feel seen, heard, and valued? Do you make time for them, or are you always too busy? Do you make others feel inspired, or are you too consumed by your own struggles to lift them up? One day, someone will stand in front of a room and try to sum up your entire existence in a few sentences. The life you are living right now is the script they will read from. If that thought makes you uneasy, if you feel like your story isn't what you want it to be, change it while you still can.